Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going over gaming news consolidated. This is December 29th through January 4th. Man, can you believe we're in 2025 already? Man, time is flying for me. I don't know about you guys. But what I do every week is I take time to look over different videos, different articles, do some research. It's anywhere roughly from 6 to 10 hours of doing this, and I compile a lot of the news, just about all of the main stuff over the week, and put it all for you in one place. So, yeah, today we're going to talk about Call of Duty and their Squid Games, which is not good. We're going to also talk about the makers of Stalker 2. We're also going to talk about Jimmy Carter. He was the 39th president of the United States. He was 100 years old, and yeah, he died this last week. We're going to talk too about an interview with PlayStation Studio CEO Herman Holst, and he said some pretty interesting stuff. A little bit about Square Enix. We're going to talk too about Steam, with just how many games are actually out there, which is insane. We're going to talk about Nintendo 2 having updating one of their patents, which I think is very telling of what the Switch 2 is going to be like, or at least one of the main features. We're going to take some time too to go over where the console companies are at after 2024. So we're going to look at monthly active users, revenue, subscribers, and then a main point of each one with what they're working on right now after 2024. And yeah, there's other stuff too. So hey, thanks for tuning in. You can always find me at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube. Like, sub, all that jazz. You can also find me at Twitch if you basically want to see everything there first. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. All right, let's start with Call of Duty. Unfortunately, it's turning into Destiny. Like honestly, nickel and diming. Just like Destiny, the skins, the operators, the bundles, the gun cosmetics, the battle pass, black cell, blueprints, buying XP boost, the even buying the guns outright for some of these event challenges, the animated skins that look better, that move and whatever. And is that honestly enough? No, it's not. Now they're having you actually pay for events. So with the Squid Games, it's basically a split like battle pass, a mini one. The bottom tier, of course, you get for free, which is just about nothing, honestly, except for a couple of basic operator skins to represent players in the Squid Games, a male and a female. And then the top tier has like better looking gun skins, has like the front man operator skin, and some others. Even a takedown. And what's crazy is that the takedown doesn't even work. It runs fine, the animation's fine, but like the person you're going after, it doesn't take them down. So yeah, they definitely got to work on fixing that, and that's just bad on top of just paying for this. This is 1,100 COD points to actually pay for this event. Again, this event is going to last what, like a month and a half, something like that. And that's pretty expensive, because we're talking about another basically $11 to actually pay for this. And then you have one of the main points to pay for doesn't even work. It doesn't even function like it's supposed to. So how did that even get past testing? I honestly have no idea. It's getting pretty insane. But all of this too just basically reminds me of Destiny, where you went to pay for content, and everything that you could purchase, all of the cosmetics, all of the stuff you could wear, all of the bonus stuff, even some of the content or even things to be a part of, you actually had to pay like basically mini DLCs for. Otherwise, it was blocked off to you. And it's just like, what in the world? And then Destiny started taking some of this stuff away. And now with these events, COD's doing that too. And it's just wild. So yeah, I've been able to play the Squid Games a little bit. There are some different modes. Some of them are actually pretty fun, and if you're fairly good at it and you learn the basics, you can actually earn some points pretty quickly. More, in my opinion, than what you could actually earn in a match in most cases. But yeah, red light, green light's probably my favorite so far, but I haven't tried as many of the other ones. I've tried one of the others, which I can't quite remember, but it's basically like zombies. But yeah, I didn't particularly like that one. There's some other ones I got to try, but this is just ridiculous. Like we didn't get any new maps. We the new modes that we got, are interesting, but there's issues too with even like red light, green light. Um, so that if you completely stop before the song's over and the robot turns its head to look at you, it still counts you as still moving. And this is an issue with the servers. This is an issue with everything running in the game, and everything is just a little delayed. And I even got to see that sometimes in some of my matches, and that even happened to myself. Completely still, not talking, and I still die anyway. And yeah, I should record some of this because, yeah, it's incredibly frustrating. And it feels cheap. And then you have the issues with the animation for the takedown not actually taking down the player like it should be, and then just the tiered battle pass, basically the mini battle pass for the event, and it's just like, man, this is just getting worse. Again, it's just turning into Destiny, and boy, if they keep this up, I honestly can't see their player base sticking around with all of the other issues on top of it. So yeah, and they have like 9 studios working on this game. And we're getting another one at the end of 2025. I still think there's going to be a lot of players from PlayStation that are going to buy it. I still think there's a lot of folks from Xbox that are going to get it, at least that have Game Pass. They'll try it out or whatever. But yeah, PC. Yeah, I think the console players will play, but PC looks like it's done. I mean, we're basically getting to 100,000 players. They're losing players every month in November and December. I doubt January is going to be much better. I just think the PC players are just tapping out. And they're like the really big content creators, right? In most cases. They play on a PC, and they're just done. There's just too many issues. It's not fun anymore. And man, for those that have built their entire channel around COD and X Defiant, like, what are they going to do? Honestly, I don't know. They have that to figure out. Let's talk about GameStop. You can actually get refurbished PlayStation 5 Pros already. Isn't that crazy? And so, yeah, you can get these for about $635. You get a charge cord, which isn't always the correct cord, which is hilarious. One controller, and you actually get little feet, but they're not the original little feet. Looks like they're actually manufacturing aftermarket little feet, which aren't as good. But they do work and function to actually hold your PlayStation and to stand it up. But honestly, you don't necessarily need the feet anyway. At least that's what quite a few channels are saying, is that, it works. It's got a big enough base to stand on its own, but the little feet just gives you a little bit more stability. You can also buy pre-owned PS5 Pros. So there's the refurbished ones and the pre-owned ones. So people are already turning these in. These had to be purchased or pre-ordered, right? People tried them out or whatever, and then it was just like, nope, it's not worth it. I really wonder how much money they got back. Because, yeah, this was $700. I hope some people too, have paid the scalpers, unfortunately, but the scalpers are losing money because you can still go to PlayStation's website and just buy the PS5 Pro right there. And then not too often, but I did see a Pro, I think, at Target during the holidays. But again, there was just one there. But there's the other versions too. But yeah, I just think it's very interesting. Here's the $700 amazing top of the tier refresh, Pro console, $700, and people are trading them in after a month or a couple of months. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy. GameStop's making some money off of this, but again, if there's not a lot of demand, if the scalpers are all getting screwed, which they are, they're starting to sell the console for actually less than what they paid for it, anywhere from $6 or $650, something like that, or they're still adding other additional accessories to it or games, whatever they can do to try to get it out the door, make it a better deal. But I think it's easy to say that it's just not a value proposition. We've talked about that before too on the channel. With the PSSR, the devs have to figure out how to do this, how to work this, unfortunately, and it's just extremely challenging to get it to look better. While it does fix some issues, PSSR, it trades in new ones. And so, yeah, they got to figure that out. I'm already hearing, too, that there's a PSSR 2.0 with possibly, GTA 6, which that's expected to be out in fall of this year, 2025. So, yeah, maybe they're already working on upgrading it, updating it, which if that's the case, how are they doing that already so quickly within about a year's time if there's really not a lot of new data going around for it? Though what I think's been happening is, again, we've talked about this as well, is that PSSR is actually using user data for those that have bought the PlayStation 5 Pro and are using that data to improve itself. And so I think that's where this update's going to come from. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Because, yeah, there's a few things like Mike Cerny was able to express that PSSR has never seen before. And so it wasn't exactly sure how to render that properly. But hey, with all of the users out there buying the Pro and giving it a shot, that would be at least some new data and something for the AI to learn from. But yeah, I just think it's interesting. The Pro is already almost $600 if you want to get a refurbished one from GameStop, which that's rolling the dice on its own. But yeah, I can't remember a time when the One X or the PS4 Pro, with them ever being available pre-owned or refurbished within the first year, let alone just the first couple of months. Again, this is not another good optic for the PlayStation 5 Pro. I don't think they're selling this like they want. Seriously. It's weird. And it doesn't bode well, too, for doing another refresh. Because if this is how it's being treated, if the improvements are marginal or you're trading in things now for software like PSSR and it's improving some things and adding more issues for others, at what point is are we going to get another refresh? I honestly don't know. I don't think we will. I think our refresh will be updated upscalers ultimately, because we know Xbox has one that's a FSR that's also over at PlayStation. We know PlayStation has PSSR as well, and then we also know there's DLSS and FSR with PC. And then this actually gets me into my next thing real quick. I got it. Well, I guess we'll get into that in just a second. Let's get through some other news first. Otherwise, I'm going to mess myself up. I'm human, folks. I can't help it. But hey, let's go ahead and get into the next thing. Game Pass's lineup for 2025. And honestly, it's looking pretty dang good. So I'm going to read through this list of what we know is coming in 2025. And then which ones I'm excited for. But yeah, starting in January, we have Road 96, Eternal Strands, Sniper Elite Resistance, Citizen Sleeper 2. February, we get Avowed. March, we get Atom Fall, Football Manager 25, Commandos Origins, Wintoboro. For the rest of 2025, these are all confirmed. We get Wheel World, Dead Static Drive, Claire Obscure, Expedition 33, Replaced, 33 Immortals. Interesting. 33 is popular. Lost in Random, The Eternal Die, which is the second game. Firebreak, Outer Worlds 2. Calibra and the Souls of Limbo. Little Rocket Lab. The Altars, Subnautica 2, Sleight of Hand, South of Midnight, Fable, Doom the Dark Ages, Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers, Mixtape, and Bounty Star. These are all games that we're getting. This is like 20 games. 25 games we're all getting in 12 months. That's on average 2 a month. That's wild. This also doesn't include whatever else might be showing up. Of course, these are more like... Most of these are kind of like A or AA titles with kind of like bigger budgets than an indie would have. But we're going to be having indies as well. And taking a look at this, I'm excited for Eternal Strands, Sniper Elite Resistance, Avowed, Atomfall, Expedition 33, Lost in Random, Outer Worlds 2, Subnautica 2, which that's going to be early access, not a full release. Midnight release, Fable, Doom, and Wu Chang. I'm excited to actually try all of these. And guessing how much all of these are going to cost, the games that I've highlighted here, it's about $700 worth of video games just for 2025. And if I buy them outright, it's a risk, right? Because what if I don't like it? What if it doesn't run well? What if I feel like I wasted my money? Well, with Game Pass, you get to try these. You pay for $20 instead. And $240 a year is a heck of a lot cheaper than $700. Especially if you have kids or whatnot. Yeah, the value proposition of Game Pass is crazy. I know I've been touting this for a while, but like publishers are starting to figure this out too. Because the publishers that get their game on Game Pass, they actually get paid by Microsoft for basically every month that their game is going to be on there. Now, it's not the same amount, right? It depends on what the game is, who the publisher is, what the demand is, what expected sales are. I don't know exactly how everything is, but the higher demand game, like a Baldur's Gate 3, for example, would definitely be a heck of a lot more money than something like Lost in Random, right? There would be a difference there in price that Microsoft is willing to pay to get that game on their service. But honestly, out of the gate, that's a pretty good deal because as a company, you're already getting revenue right through the door on day one, and that's huge. And so, yeah, for these smaller publishers, I can see them going to Xbox and wanting to get on Game Pass. And then if you want to get on Game Pass, you're probably willing to take in the negotiations a smaller amount of money than if Xbox comes to you, right? So yeah, Game Pass. I mean, just the amount of games there is pretty crazy. And then of course also with Ultimate, you get multiplayer in there added in as well, which that's $75 now. Like it is, it's not getting any cheaper. All right, let's talk about the GSC. They're the ones that made Stalker 2. They've confirmed that they're not planning to make a PS5 port for Stalker 2 at all. What we're hearing is that since Microsoft helped GSC during the war, which is still going on, to help them relocate and also cover their story, the GSC is going to keep the game on PC and Xbox. So if you haven't watched their doc, I'll actually link this down below in the description. It's a little over an hour, but boy, it's pretty incredible actually what the team went through. What a difference. And not all of them made it, which is unfortunate. War is hell, folks. That's awful. The GSC, they've sold about 1.4 million units so far, and that's just on Steam. They also sold more units on Xbox, and then it's also been available on Game Pass. So we're seeing this too with multiple games like Starfield or Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2, is that, not everyone, of course, has the service, but the service doesn't really seem to be hindering sales too much. They're still selling. If the game's good, people will go out and buy it, right? And especially too, some of them like myself would like physical copies, which are going to get hard to find, and I could even see getting a premium for it at some point. But yeah, we don't have sales numbers on Xbox or how many have actually played on Game Pass, but GSC have said that it's been a way bigger game than what they thought. They were hoping, I think, for hundreds of thousands. And they've sold 1.4 million just on Steam. So congratulations to them. And Stalker 2 is a wonderful survival game. Man, it is an immersive blast. And challenging too. You're going to die a lot. And that's kind of the fun of the game, honestly. So it's kind of, they're not going to hold your hand. It's great. So we do know that GSC has also said that they are officially profitable. They roughly had a budget of $100 million. But even with 1.4 million units sold at $60 on Steam, they're definitely making some money. So, yeah. And then they also got paid from Microsoft for having it on Game Pass. We don't know how much that is, or the copies they've sold on Xbox. So, but yeah, if you're waiting for a port on PS5, it doesn't look like it's coming. So if you want to go play it, either get an Xbox, which it does run on the Series S. Not the best version, but that is a cheaper version. You can get a pre-owned one for like, $200 now. and then or 250 somewhere in there. Or you can get it on PC, or you can get it on. You try it on Game Pass for PC and try it out. And if you don't like it, hey, that's okay. It only costs you $12. That's pretty cheap. If you want to try it on Xbox, it's $20. So, yeah, I just wanted to let folks know that this is kind of an unexpected exclusive, actually, at least right now. We'll have to see in the future. So Jimmy Carter died, 39th president of the United States, 100 years old. It's pretty rare for anyone to make it that long. And he only had 4 years, but boy, it was busy. So this is just some bullet points here, but he barely won the election. He was dealing with stagflation in the economy when he took office, and also ended with a recession in the early 80s. His last his last term was 81. He also had the energy crisis of 79. Iran's revolution cut oil supply, and so that was an issue. We also had the Department of Energy, which was created in 77 due to the effects of an earlier oil crisis in 73. There was also gas rationing then, which still had, psychological effects of everybody standing in line trying to get gas. He also deregulated airlines and beer making, and so that was more free-flowing stuff, which is a pretty big deal. There's a lot of revenue in that. There's also the Chrysler bailout, which was roughly about $10.9 billion today, just to bail out the company. They weren't making enough, and they couldn't handle their debt load, so the government basically bailed them out. He also lifted the ban on LGBT so that they could join federal employment. That was also a really big thing. Boy, if you think things are charged now, just look at the 70s. Also, the Camp David Accords, which was to set up how the Middle East is today, to try to bring peace. Of course, that hasn't panned out that way, and I don't think it ever will. I think there will always be issues there dating back thousands of years. So, yeah, I don't think anyone can ever completely fix it. Trump tried that. George W. Bush tried that. Obama tried that. Clinton. I mean, it's been basically every president in the United States since I've been alive has actually been trying this, and of course, Jimmy Carter did too. Let's see. Also recognized full relations with China. This was huge. This actually opened up trade and allowed companies to put manufacturing companies over in China and to manufacture goods there, or to even just import stuff. So yeah, this was a massive economic boom for China. This produced a lot of cheaper goods for us here in the States, and that's kind of why everything is made in China. This is the start of it right here. It's pretty incredible. And then we also had the Iran hostage crisis at the U.S. Embassy. That was a whole debacle he had to deal with. We also had the SALT II treaty between the United States and the Soviet Union at the time, banning testing for nuclear bomb tests above and below ground. This was the whole idea of kind of like reducing the armament to become more peaceful, banning of testing basically, to just be like, hey, let's just be at peace. The Cold War doesn't have to cook off. Because, yeah, with JFK, we were really close to nuclear war. That's pretty crazy. This was, again, just to kind of disarm her. And then we also had the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan during his presidency. So that's his presidency in a nutshell. And that is a ton of stuff. And honestly, regardless of how we feel about certain presidents or politics in general, the president carries the world on their shoulders. We're the most influential country. We are the world reserve currency. We police a lot of other nations all over. We have fleets and bases all over. We are the most influential country in the world. And so the president is the most influential figurehead in the world. And to carry that burden, you should see what they look like when they enter office. Doesn't matter which president. But you should see what they look like when they enter office and what they look like at the end of 4 years. And they age a ton. It's got to be one of the most stressful jobs in the world. So, yeah, respect to Jimmy Carter and any other president, of course, that's going to become our president. Even Joe Biden to a degree for myself personally, while there were a lot of things I didn't agree with, he was still the president of our country. And, some things I agree with, some things I don't. But yeah, in my opinion, he shouldn't have been in office in the first place, and that's another issue. Hopefully, we don't have to go through that again with someone that's clearly having signs of um, mental disability. But yeah, we are going to get a new president, and so yeah, we'll see how that works out. Okay, let's talk about the director for Final Fantasy Rebirth. Of course, this is Square Enix, and basically just said again that they have made money with Final Fantasy VII, but they can't do exclusives anymore. They need to be able to release everything at the same time, as on many platforms as they can. And this is probably the third time in 2024 that they've actually said this. And yeah, I just think it's interesting. They do have another game coming in their trilogy, so their Final Fantasy VII trilogy. We had Crisis Core, but then with Rebirth, well, they didn't port it over to last gen stuff, just current gen, which that definitely hurt sales numbers. And yeah, I'm kind of curious if there's been an agreement already with the third game just to be on PlayStation. But we know that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming over to PC. It's actually coming out this month in January. We already went over that last week. But eventually, is the trilogy going to come over to Xbox anyway? And are they eventually going to try to port it over to Nintendo, or like the Nintendo Switch 2, which that's coming this year? I don't know. I just think it's very interesting. Square Enix, their financials haven't been great. We've covered those two a little bit over last year. But yeah, they really need to be making some money. And it's not just them. Okay, it's also Take-Two Interactive, which we're going to get into later. I think that's on here. Yeah, we will. We'll get it toward the end. But yeah, they really need to be able to make money. And this is every publisher right now. The idea is to expand the user base, the opportunity to sell. And that's exactly what they're doing. That's what everybody's doing, including PlayStation. The only one that's not really doing this is Nintendo. They're staying in their bubble. But even PlayStation, even though they're focusing on exclusives, not wanting to get stuff over to Xbox, some of the stuff is making it over to Xbox anyway. Because they're actually selling the publisher rights to the developers. And the developer is saying, oh yeah, let's get it over to Xbox. It's more sales. And they know that. Whether it's, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or a few million, okay, it's generally worth the risk to them to actually take the time and make a port and get it over there. Because again, they can, generally speaking, make more money. And why wouldn't you want to do that? And then two, we're getting away from this exclusivity because we're seeing the data of where if it's coming out later, the hype is kind of gone by the time it comes out on the other platforms. And so for everything to come out at once, the hype builds, there's more people talking about it, there's more social media and YouTube chatter, and they make more sales because of that. And there's just, it's just circulating around more. So I really feel like we're seeing the end of exclusivity, which is pretty wild. Let's talk about PlayStation. In an interview with the studio CEO Herman Holst, said that they're still focused on live service after Concord. I'm not too excited about that. They did cancel 6 games, and the several games we've gotten from them for live service, like Foam Stars and Concord, hasn't been great. And we're still going to get Marathon. That's going to be live service. And also Fair Games. That's going to be live service too. And then what about Project Gummy Bears? We'll have to see what that is in the future. But I'm guessing, again, that's going to be like a live service game of some sort. Yeah, I just think it's incredibly interesting. We still see that Helldivers was a success. But boy, everything else that they put out so far as a live service just hasn't been. It's been pretty bad. And again, some of these too, some of them are just staying exclusive on PlayStation, and again, that's not working. Okay, Foam Stars is a great example of that. And it's like, well, okay. Because again, Xbox is just admitting that things are different, that they have to change things, and so they're changing the industry. And exclusivity, again, it's not really a thing anymore. It's quite different. So they did say that the reason is that single player ultimately isn't enough. Isn't that fascinating? Single player is not enough to pay the bills anymore at PlayStation. They have to do live service. Again, this is from Herman Holst in an interview that he had recently. And yeah, they actually need live service to stay alive. They're also wanting to have multimedia IPOs, which they've talked about that as well. They've also said that they don't have enough IPs to actually do this, which is ridiculous. They have plenty out there. Like, who wouldn't want Jack and Dexter plushies or Sly Cooper Funko Pop or something? I mean, come on. Some of that stuff would be kind of cool to actually own, if it's not priced insanely. But yeah, they want to create new IPs to have this multimedia presence where they can make movies, they can make books or graphics or toys or whatever to actually get stuff out there. But again, like Concord was supposed to be that, and look how that turned out. That was a really big bet that didn't work out, unfortunately. But it's like, again, I just want them to focus on making good games. They're getting ahead of their skis here. It's like, let's actually create something good, and then when it's good, and there's hype around it, and you've established the IP, then build out from that. Again, this is like multi-year, maybe a decade type of plan, but they're trying to speed it up to get money in through the door. And then we get something like Concord. It's really, really bad. Plus two, I want to mention this. PlayStation is now so big, it's grown beyond the single-player need. And this is what they just used to focus on. Their big thing was single-player games, physical games. Like, PlayStation was the place to be. I remember playing to a lot of them, and they're sitting on a ton of IPs that they're not doing anything with. They could at least remaster some of this stuff. I would love G-Police. I think that would be so fun. But now that they need live service, man, they've gotten so big, they have to have live service. And so this is another issue with live service that I don't think many talk about on their channels or in the news, is that once you get to a point where you do something that's more expensive than what you have been doing, and then it starts becoming successful, well, you've grown to a point, and then you have to keep doing that thing that made you grow, that made you more money, in order to be sustainable. And then what happens when it doesn't work? Destiny 2 canceling 6 games, Fair Games being delayed, Marathon being delayed a year, maybe even over a year at this point, the failure of Concord. Like, Sony can't keep doing this. They need to find a way to make money, but now, if single-player games aren't even enough, and they have to do live service, boy, they better figure out something. That's kind of scary, honestly. It also shows, too, that they're never going to do, like, their service release date like what Game Pass is doing. They're not going to have day one releases of their AAA first-party titles, like God of War or Spider-Man or something like that. Because, again, they need the actual sales. We also got to see this in some memos from Sony with the Insomniac hack, which I think was 2023. So yeah, Sony has to figure out something, man, because yeah, if they continue on this path, they will be losing money. And if PlayStation fails, well, PlayStation is their biggest thing, unfortunately. Compared to any other media, making movies, TVs, that makes a little bit of money, but yeah, gaming is by far their biggest. It's pretty big. It's about $30 billion a year. And if PlayStation goes, then yeah, that's not good. And I don't want that. Honestly, I don't want that. Okay, I want there to be good, healthy competition. I want there to be some innovation. Okay, kind of like we're seeing right now. But man, yeah, this is just getting crazy. Also, Herman Hulse also said that single-player games are now going to be a case-by-case basis. Quote, to decide on a policy on whether it is a best sales format for the player or company. I modified that a little bit because, again, that part of the sentence is taken out of context, so I added a few articles in there. But yeah, to decide on a policy on whether it is best sales format for the player or company. So again, they're like going to look at games and decide, okay, should we put it over on PC? Should we put it over on Nintendo? Okay, like Lego Horizons? Or should we eventually even just send some stuff over to Xbox? Or should we sell the publishing rights? Again, like MLB The Show, like Death Stranding. And then they can decide what they want to do. And then, of course, they want to send it over to Xbox. So regardless of how they say they're exclusive, that is really starting to ebb away. It's pretty crazy. And ultimately, the sales are going to dictate what's truly exclusive or not. I don't even know if Astrobot might actually stay truly exclusive, not go anywhere else. But boy, a lot of other games they actually need to get. Again, it's money. Follow the money, folks. That's ultimately what it is. The last place they'll go, of course, is Xbox. Um, but like Square Enix too has said that it's about sales. They don't want to do any more true exclusives. And now even timed, they don't even really want to do timed exclusives now after Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. And even Sony is now saying, yeah, we'll decide what's best for the company on our single player games. So yeah, the wall's breaking down, folks. This is truly amazing to see in real time. Almost everything is basically going over to PC from Sony. And then some of it, too, is also making over to Xbox, like we talked about. So PC right now, it's the best place to play. There's very, very true exclusives left between Xbox and PlayStation. We're even getting Forspoken this year on Xbox. Woohoo, folks. Aren't you excited? That was also supposed to be an exclusive, and, well, that's not the case. We're going to be getting that game as well this month. I'm not buying it, but again, it's about trying to get the sales numbers. Follow the money. But yeah, exclusives won't be selling the console anymore. That's basically in our future, if not already. And yeah, that is just extremely interesting because again, that's been the business model from the start since the 80s. And that business model is changing. I don't think it's changing for Nintendo, but it's changing for everybody else. And so they're going to have to do a better job selling something else. Because, yeah, exclusivity isn't going to work anymore. Kojima has delayed OD. This is kind of an interesting looking game, but we got to look at this last year. And it's because of due to the strike, the writers and the voice actors. So, yeah, it has been delayed. We'll see, too, if the strike affects Death Stranding 2. So far, there's no official word on this. But yeah, the strike has actually lasted long enough to delay and affect some games. And I wonder if also this is affecting some of the delays that we're seeing already. Because again, we've had the strike going on. We've had people wanting to change jobs or make more money. We've seen layoffs too and cutbacks, which is bad for morale for making a video game. It's just kind of getting crazy. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. But yeah, OD is going to be delayed, so we're probably not even going to see it this year, in my opinion. We'll maybe see it next year in 2026, maybe even 2027. We'll have to see. Steam has had a busy year. There were 19,000 games released in 2024 on Steam. 19,000. Of course, some of these are kind of more shovelware games, right? But these are also some good indies, some good A games, AA, AAA, some games that are only on PC, some that are also available on console. Yeah, but 19,000 is crazy. To give some perspective, Xbox has about 600 games a year. Maybe about 1,000. And this was estimated for 2023. Because again, we don't really have 2024 data yet. Steam Steam had 4,500 more games released than the previous year. So again, people are trying to jump in and actually make some money. We all hearing that there's more teams that are very, very small or even just a one-man band that are making video games and releasing them, like Balatro or Manor They were just made by one guy. There's also easier features and tools in Unreal Engine 5 to cut down the work, to make it possible, to make it easier for these people, for these smaller teams, and even one-man bands to make these games. It's also becoming more popular to break away and start independent projects, because again, they're not agreeing with the leadership, the way the game is developing and going, or the release, or maybe, too, they get laid off. Okay, let's think of Suicide Squad. That totally was not something we expected from Rocksteady, but it happened. It's a company that I don't particularly trust anymore. They need to prove it to me. And that's because I work hard for my money. So $70, it's expensive. And to go from the Batman Arkham series to Suicide Squad, Man, yeah, nope, that's not good. That's not good, and I do certainly blame the co-founders on this. At least part of the blame there because they agreed to do the project. It's like, man, you should have put your foot down and said no. And now they've broken away, started a new studio called 100 Star. They've also taken some of the devs with them at Rocksteady that are now over at 100 Star, and they're going to working on a single player AAA experience. We'll have to see what their first game is. But yeah, I just think it's very, very interesting. Also, I wanted to mention too that 65% of the dev studios make games for PC. 65%. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not making console versions, but out of all of the studios out there, 65% of them are making something for PC. That's pretty incredible. So yeah, 19,000 games. Like, we're probably going to see over 20K this year in 2025, which is insane. Let's talk about Nintendo. They're having an update to one of their patents, and it's showing that it's an AI upscaler for resolutions in their games. So we've seen PSSR already. We've already had FSR and DLSS over on PC. FSR is also available on PlayStation 5 and Series X, which is insane. Also Series S. And then PSSR is, of course, the PlayStation 5 Pro. And Nintendo's now going to have one, it looks like. So we can expect this with the Switch too. We'll get more information when the Switch actually releases, when we actually get some games for this. But yeah, it's a new upscaler for devs to learn. And with more devs wanting to port around and put out more versions and stuff, that's got to be more difficult too. And so yeah, this is just another upscaler to deal with. We've already had issues with PSSR. It is its first version, but man, it's got to be getting difficult. All of the different things to learn, and like the industry is definitely shifting and changing, and we're going to have some growing pains there, I think, for roughly the rest of the decade as companies figure out what they want to do, as devs figure out how to make these games. We've also had a lot of retirements. We've had some deaths as well in the 2020s, and so we have new blood in there. And being new blood on top of all of this changing technology, it'll definitely benefit them in the future. Getting in while it's rough, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a rough rest of the decade, I think, as these devs continue to finish the games that they're making and start new ones. But yeah, even Nintendo, they're going to get into an upscaler. Looks like it's maybe going to be designed or built kind of roughly off of DLSS. I don't know if it's going to be exactly DLSS, but the fact that they're updating a patent for their own upscaler, I imagine it'll be something like DLSS. But we'll have to see. We'll honestly have to see. So yeah, Nintendo's upscaler I'll refer to as NSR. Nintendo Super Resolution. Because yeah, what else are we going to call it? Let's go ahead and dig into some more PlayStation. PlayStation Plus has some new games coming out for January. Their AAA game for January is Suicide Squad. Unfortunately, game is super cheap. They're going to be ending support in June of this year. There will be an offline mode when the servers actually go offline, so you can continue to play their game. This is the cheapest I've ever seen a game go. We went from a $70 game down to $7 a few weeks ago during holiday sales and whatnot for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. But yeah, this is basically a dead game already. I don't even think anyone really covers it. We just got Deathstroke for Season 4. Excuse me, but we're not going to be getting any more updates, any more content. Like, that's it. That is the game. How it is now is basically how it's going to stay, with an addition of Deathstroke, which is kind of crazy. And yeah, since I'm doing Game Pass roughly about every month, or I'm showing what's going to be released for next month, I'm also going to do PlayStation Plus. So they usually dish out, 3 or 4 games a month that are coming to PlayStation Plus or PlayStation Premium. And yeah, since I do one of the services, I might as well do the other, because there's some PlayStation folks here too. And yeah, I will be continuing to do that going forward. Let's see. We'll also be getting the Stanley Parable, which I really want to play this, actually. I just haven't had time. And then the remastered of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit. So you'll be getting that for January. Let's talk about how the console companies are doing after 2024. Now, this is the latest data I could pick up. This is some data. Most of it's from 2024. Some of it, too, is projections, though not most of it. Projections are maybe just titled in there a little bit. And then some of this would also be data from the end of 2023. But again, the majority of this is 2024. So we're going to be going over PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, and Steam. Let's see. How much time do I have left? We're kind of toward the end. Okay, so MAUs, monthly active users. PlayStation has 120 million in their ecosystem. Nintendo has 128 million, which is honestly kind of more than I thought. And then Xbox has 150 million. This is, though, after their 360 store was announced that it was closing. Before this announcement, there was 125 million. So pretty big jump there. I assume some of that is just turning on those old 360s and booting them up and being like, oh, hey, there's millions more consoles that are suddenly online after we're going to shut the store down. So, and everything too is honestly very, very cheap at the store. Nintendo did that as well with the Wii U store. So, because we're going to be getting the Switch 2 pretty soon. For reference, Steam has 132 million monthly active users, and Epic Games has 75 million monthly active users. The majority of those for Epic Games are, of course, Fortnite. If we include Microsoft games, this includes mobile, all the Call of Duty players that are playing, etc. We're looking at 500 million users. That is just a crazy number. Let's take a look at revenue. Nintendo made $11 billion last year. This was a 7% increase. This roughly works out to about $75 per console sold. Xbox, they made $21.5 billion, which is a 44% increase, which is pretty flipping good. This is about roughly $693 per console sold. And then PlayStation has made revenue of $29.5, which is a 17% increase, and they're making roughly about $450 per console sold. Steam made revenue of $8.6 billion. Epic made $5.7 billion. If we're looking at console sales, Nintendo so far has about 146 million console sales for the Switch. PlayStation 5 is 65 million. I think it's 65.5. And then Xbox is roughly about 31 million. Subscribers. This is actually subscribing to the service. Nintendo has 40 million users that are subscribed to their Nintendo service. I don't believe these numbers include... we'll get into that. So 40 million, this is, as far as I know, those that are... again, it wasn't detailed for Nintendo, the 40 million, how it's laid out exactly between paying for multiplayer versus paying for some of the higher tier services. So I don't have that information. PlayStation has about 6 million PlayStation Plus subscribers and 8 million premium subscribers, and then 33 million essential subscribers to their service. We do know with an updated number for toward the end of last year, 2024, PlayStation has 50 million total subscribers. So there's 3 million that are roughly unaccounted for. And this would actually be the first time in almost a decade they've actually been able to get over 48 million. So some people bought into some more of their service, which is good for them. It's perfect. Because, they've been stagnant for a long time. Xbox has about 35 million. This is both standard tier and ultimate for Game Pass. And these are, quote, fully paid subscribers. This does not include live or core subscribers. In 2022, this was 11.7 million before Game Pass Core came along. And again, getting these numbers for Xbox is pretty convoluted. It's pretty imperfect. I'm expecting in 2025 we'll probably have at least a couple of updates because they have a lot of games coming this year. Apparently, Black Ops 6 was a really big success, the biggest success they've ever had out of the decades of the franchise. PC Game Pass is roughly about 15 million right now. So total Game Pass users for PC, Standard, and Ultimate are roughly 50 million. And then this does not include multiplayer. So it's bigger than PlayStation, which is surprising. It's gotten pretty big. And yeah, these are still kind of older-ish numbers for Xbox, so we'll have to see what the updated numbers are. We we don't know how many they'll have moved between tiers. So this kind of convolutes the totals a little bit between the subscriber numbers for each system. Though of course we don't have all of the numbers for Nintendo, but yeah, we don't know exactly how many have moved up or even moved down. Some people weren't excited when PlayStation and Xbox were like, "Hey, we're going to raise the prices," and they're like, "Well, screw that. I'm gonna hop off. I'm gonna switch over. I'm going to I'm gonna do something, or I'm gonna bump down a tier." I know of a couple friends that actually did that. So, yeah, one thing that's interesting is PlayStation has just the multiplayer side. The majority are over on multiplayer, and PlayStation Plus and Premium are finally starting to see growth almost after a decade, which is good. And then Xbox Game Pass is being extremely successful. Most of the people are on the Ultimate side or on PC Game Pass, and those numbers are doing very, very well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how 2025 shapes up. And I imagine more people will buy into Game Pass or at least try it every so often as these games roll out, like the list I went over. Because there's even a ton more that are not even assured for 2025. They could be 2026, but some of those could come out in 2025 as well. Oh, let's see. Let's talk about Nintendo. Of course, they're likely releasing their Switch 2 in 2025. These are some of the kind of like the bigger bullet points. So yeah, for Nintendo, they're releasing their Switch this year, which is most likely, and then they also have their lawsuit, their patent suit against Pal World for patent infringement. Pal World has already made some changes and adjustments. This lawsuit is still ongoing, and so yeah, we'll have to see. The big thing for the patent is, or for the lawsuit is, Nintendo wants to reserve the right for an injunction. Which they could just kill the game, honestly. Pal World is still making updates to their game, still putting out new stuff. They just had another big update, actually, last month. So they're still going forward as if it's going to stay alive. Nintendo was not able to get them on actual IP infringement, and so they're going after the patents. And the patents aren't even finished. This is so ridiculous. Yeah, they're not even finished yet. And this is incredibly frustrating because we just want Nintendo to actually innovate, and they haven't in a long time. And if it gets to a point where Pal World actually wins the suit and is able to stay alive, boy, Nintendo better get their butt in gear because they can't just rely on old IPs anymore that they keep reselling over the last 40 years. They actually need to innovate. They actually need to keep up with the industry a little bit more. And I think that's partly why we're seeing this upscaler for Nintendo, honestly. They're trying to keep up. I also think, too, the Switch 2 is going to be $400. I don't think it's going to be $300. I think it's going to be $400. So we'll see how that works out. For Sony, the big one this year is that they had a lawsuit from someone that they fired, Chris Barrett. He's still suing the company for like $200 million because he was never given the opportunity to defend himself against his allegations. They never actually told him what he was being investigated for, and his payout for being one of the big leads or directors at PlayStation, actually over at Bungie, was that he basically lost $45 million. Because of the allegations and stuff, they didn't pay him out. So Sony never paid, and so he's suing them for, of course, $200 million because that makes sense. But yeah, that's actually ongoing. That's a really big thorn in Sony's side. They also got done having another lawsuit finished, which was a few $1 billion, 7.8 or 8 billion, something like that, because of the monopoly that they had on their store. So basically, they're paying people out for charging too much for video games through their store. And so, yeah, Sony just finished with that. People on average are getting about $400. So, yeah, check your email. Make sure you're actually if you have an email, you qualify for money. So hey, it could buy a few games, maybe. Yeah, I'd at least check it out. It'd be like quote free money, and you could get some of that money back. That'd be worth keeping up. Also, PSSR 2.0. We're going to be getting that, I think, in 2025 with what we heard about GTA 6. Let's talk about Xbox. Their big thing is that they have a stay from the U.S. courts right now, thanks to Google, on the Xbox app for Android. And I'm sure Xbox is pretty frustrated about this. They were going to release this in November, and it's January now, and still no word on that. And so it's really up to the U.S. courts. This is a temporary thing. It's not permanently blocked forever, but it is going to be blocked, I think, for a while. And again, it's competition for Google. Excuse me. Let me get the right company. Because they have, of course, their PlayStation store. Excuse me, their Google store. Sorry, my kids are yammering in the background, and it's distracting. But yeah, Google, of course, has their Play Store, and of course, they make money off of their video games. But having competition and on the Android now, which is the majority of users, it's around 60-65%, and they make a ton of revenue from that, I'm sure. But to have the competition of Game Pass, basically, or being able to stream what you buy on any device through the Xbox store, well, that's definitely going to take some revenue away from Google, and I'm sure they don't like that. So, but the other argument could be said too that for Android, Google Play Store has a monopoly. So, yeah, the changes that Xbox has been making, man, there has been a ton of pushback. It's been pretty incredible. So yeah, we'll have to see. Game Pass is going to have a massive flush as well for 2025. I'd at least try some games, or maybe try to beat it in a month. See if you could just buy a game basically for $20 instead of the full price. And two, if you want to save money, PlayStation Plus stuff is really hard to find on sale. But Xbox, you can find it all day at G2A or CD keys. So I just want to put that out there. I just paid for 12 months for $132 instead of $240. So I saved a lot of money there. So I definitely suggest checking those places out. Again, that is cdkeys.com or g2a.com. Don't use your debit card, okay? Use a credit card or a prepaid, something like that. Protect yourself. But yeah, you can definitely get way cheaper discounts for just about anything. Let's keep going on. We're almost done here. So we got the financial projections for GTA 6. The pre-order sales are expected to be $1 billion. Total sales in the first year are expected to be $3 billion plus. This is just the sale of the game and the pre-order content. This doesn't include GTA Online, the casino, the subscriptions, or anything else, which I'm sure they're definitely going to dig into that microtransaction BS. I have no doubt in my mind. Take-Two, though, they need GTA 6 to actually be a success. Now, let's dig into some of their financials. To be fair, they have a market cap at $33 billion, but only if GTA 6 actually meets expectations at launch. Otherwise, the stock's going to fall, and they're not going to be having a $33 billion market share anymore. And if GTA 6 is a major disappointment, if the sales numbers aren't coming through, if people are basically done with microtransactions like they have been in a lot of other live service games, again, this is not likely, but we've also been surprised in 2024 with how far some games have failed. Like Concord, like Skull and Bones, like Suicide Squad. So, I don't know. I'm even myself a little leery with GTA 6. I'm sure it's going to be a huge game. No doubt in my mind. But is it going to be sustainable at the amount of money that they've pumped into it for like the last 12 years? I don't know. It's definitely going to be it's been very costly for them. But yeah, the bar right now, it's set pretty high. than any other game before it. The company's net margin at Take-Two Interactive, 2022, their net margin on average was 21%. That's a pretty big decrease. 2023 was negative 70%, which is just unfathomable. That's crazy. That means for every $100 they put in, they only got $30. And then 2024, so far on average, has been negative 23%. And it's been pretty wild to actually see that. So they still have a couple more quarters, and we'll have to see how that works. But also their debt is surprisingly pretty low. They're now at about 4.1 billion. Cash and equivalents are slowly going down, though, every single quarter. They only have about $1.25 billion in cash and equivalents. But again, that market cap is $33 billion. So they have plenty that they can actually access and deal with. And that debt is slowly growing every single quarter. And then, with their margins, it's been negative 3 years in a row, and that can't happen again for 2025. They still have some buffer there, of course, but it's GTA 6 honestly needs to be quite the kick. I do believe, many will, of course, buy at launch, do the pre-order stuff. They'll subscribe because, again, there's been already plenty of people doing GTA 5, and they need to be able to perform. If it's not a great launch or whatever, because again, we're not getting all of the features for GTA 6 right away. Some of it's going to be coming later. We're also not getting a PC version. What if they don't get all of their live service revenue like they're counting on? That could really change some things up for some of the later quarters for them. Also, the whole game, it won't be released. It'll just be the campaign first. So we'll actually see how the launch goes. I'm actually pretty curious about that. But they really need to be able to perform with GTA 6. It's probably the game that's had the biggest amount of expectation on it than any other game. And then there's just outlandish stuff out there too, of just like, hey, you'll be able to go to the moon, or like you'll be able to fly to multiple islands, or there's going to be secret content stuff out there. There's going to be bases underwater. Like, people are just kind of going ham on some of the expectations on this. And I think that's going to disappoint some people. Because, between GTA 4 and to 5 was a huge jump, but I don't think we're going to see a jump like that between 5 and 6. We finally figured out why Black Myth Wukong isn't on Xbox. We finally got all of the little pieces of the details this week. Game Science has said that the Series X has been the issue. Phil Spencer has said it's not the Series X, that the game can actually run on the Series S. Excuse me. Yeah, on the Series S. The weaker one. So, which is it? Which one's right? Well, the Turk, a dev that used to work for Sony and Xbox in the past, was able to run some benchmark tests on the game with simulating the Series S, and was able to get 1440p at 60 frames. Which is crazy. That's 1440p resolution at 60 plus frames. I even got to see 80 on some of those benchmarks. Got to see some of the gameplay itself. There was, of course, with some lower textures, but still looked fairly good. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was still pretty good. There was a scene at the beginning that Digital Foundry talked about that was really demanding for all of the platforms. So I wonder if this in itself is honestly the biggest bottleneck that the Black Myth Wukong developers, Game Science, are struggling with. Because, it's pretty close. But just a generic gameplay, even with some of the benchmark testing, he was able to add in more enemies, 10 on screen at one time, all fighting and stuff and whatever. And the RAM usage wasn't the issue. It was staying really steady around 85, 87%. So, not to say it can't become more demanding in some other areas, but where he was at was a lot of foliage. There was a lot of trees around. There was 10 enemies around. And, of course, whatever he was doing as his character, it looks like it can run, honestly. And so we did get a translated post from Game Science sharing that since they don't have years of experience of optimization, they're having trouble making it work on the Series S with just 10 gigabytes of RAM. The Series X has 16, not 10. So, though the Series S has more than 10, because I think it's 9 gigs of RAM, 8 or 9 plus plus VRAM on top of that. So there's like a total of 12 or a total of 13 gigs for the Series S total. It is still less than the Series X, but it is possible. The benchmarks tests show that Black Myth Wukong can actually run, even run on less than what the Series S has, which is pretty crazy. But again, the developers, Game Science, if it's translated correctly, they are expressing that they don't have the experience to make it run. So does that mean that? Well, this could mean a few things. This is their first game on console. They've only made mobile games after this. I'm sure console gaming is very different for development, and it's quite challenging for them. But it makes me curious, too, that, okay, well, is Xbox willing to help them to get the game over to Xbox? Because I'm sure they could sell hundreds of thousands or maybe even a couple million copies over at Xbox. They don't want to wait too long because, again, you can have some of that woohoo kind of die off the longer you wait. We've seen that with other titles already. But yeah, who's right? Honestly, it's both. Game Science is saying, hey, the Series S is the problem. We've heard this from other companies, other publishers, other studios, like Larian. Getting it to run on the Series S is really tough. But they're not saying that it's impossible, like some people are touting on their channels on YouTube. Oh, the Series S, it can't run, and so it'll never show up on Xbox. No, that's not right. That's not accurate. That's not what Game Science is saying. And Phil Spencer, well, he's right, because the Series S isn't the problem. It's the bottleneck, yes, but the game does run on Series S. The issue is the developers. And the developers admit it, that they don't have the experience to get it to run. So hopefully they do in the future. I would love to actually try Black Myth Wukong. But there's been thrown around too that Sony and Game Science has a deal to make it exclusive. That's also totally possible. Again, we wouldn't have the details of that deal. That wouldn't be public yet. So all three of these things can be accurate. Game Science is saying it's the Series S. Phil Spencer says the game can run on Series S. There can also be a deal between Sony and Game Science. All of these things can be true. So what are we complaining about here? Let's just be patient and wait. It's incredible, some of the channels out there that I've been seeing over the last couple of months talking about this. Well, it's been longer than a couple of months. It's been several. Talking about how, oh yeah, it's got to be a deal. Again, it's all of these assumptions. It's all of these, it's just presuming what's going on, and it's not actual factual data. Like I'm bringing you today. And this is why I do gaming news. This is why, too, I don't really talk about speculation in most of my news videos, is because it doesn't help anything. It doesn't do anything. And I don't, there's plenty of other channels for speculation. Go watch those. It's fine. But I want to ground myself in what's factual and what data we have. And Black Myth can run on Series S. But the devs are having a problem. Hopefully they can get it off the ground. I would love to be able to play it someday. I'm sure some other people would too. Because again, we're probably not going to get a From Software game in a long time. They would love to be able to try to play something else. We are going to get Night Rain in the future. But yeah, if you have a channel, if you're starting out, or even if you've been around for a long time, just be careful. The Black Myth Wukong story has snagged a ton of gaming channels that talk about the news, that bring updates into believing one thing or the other. And they're both right. This is what's frustrating. They're both right. People were missing the details and misleading their audience, unfortunately. So with that, folks, hopefully you guys are doing well. You can always find me at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube. Don't forget, too, you can also follow me over at Twitch. We also have Discord and also Twitter X, though I'm not on there very much, to be honest. I'm not good at the whole social media thing. I don't even have Facebook anymore. But ultimately, yeah, definitely Twitch if you want to follow me there first. I'm trying to figure out a way to do a little bit better, and I have done a little bit better, but not too many people watch me anymore. And hey, that's okay. I totally understand. When I'm trying to survive in a video game, I'm not necessarily looking at my chat very often. But if you're patient, I will respond to you. Absolutely. So hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you guys had a good Christmas. And two, I want to encourage you guys too to just think about this year. What do you want to accomplish? Who do you want to be by the end of the year? And make those goals and stay focused to achieve those goals. But to not make goals, to not focus on growing, pushing forward, progression, it's not that it's easy. Of course, it's difficult. But to not have those goals, to not have that push, you're just going to stay where you are, baby. And it sucks. And I don't want that for you. And you don't want that either. So let's make some goals. Let's be serious about it. And let's push forward. I have mine. We'll see how I do this year. And with that, folks, I'll see you guys on the next one.